everyone, welcome once again to Star Wars Discussions. I am Captain Logan.
And I'm named Dan.
Hi Dan, it's time for Star Wars talk. Today we are doing the, I think, 6th episode of Rebels, 6 by my count. It's actually kind of hard to count these because the first one was like a 1 hour, 2 episode movie, but then like Wikipedia counts them after that or something. So anyway, by my count, it's 6. So today we're talking about Out of Darkness. Last episode was Breaking Ranks, and we will answer a few questions and comments about that episode from our audience before we jump into today's episode. Shall we, Dan?
Let's do it.
Okay, here we go. Sam Groenhavd. Akbar was in a few episodes of Clone Wars. He was a captain of the Mon Cala army in that. Oh, okay. So there is some Akbar in other things, some early Akbar.
See, I was hoping for an Akbar like novel series.
I think there should be a candy bar named after Akbar.
That would be great. See, it would be cool too, like if in the past he was characterized like Fred in that new Scooby-Doo show where he's just obsessed with traps. Would be the best.
It's a trap. And by the time he finally says it in later on in the movie, you're like, oh, that's why he says it, because he always thought all the way up that it was a trap, but it was never a trap, and finally
he's been waiting to say that in a correct instance his whole life.
Waiting for it to matter forever, and everybody's always like, God, man, there's no trap. What is wrong with you? The Empire doesn't even know we're here. And then finally, hey, can I say it now? Can I say it now? Yeah, it's time, dude. It's definitely a trap. Oh, all right. It's a trap.
See, we need the origin story for that line specifically.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Somebody should hire us to write that. we totally just wrote that. That should be an episode of this show. I don't know. I think we could stretch that to 22 minutes.
I think so too. I think we're onto something here.
I mean, they stretched today's episode to 22 minutes somehow. So I feel like we can totally stretch that.
That is very true.
Satnas, your Death Star talk makes me think the series is going to end on a depressing note with almost all the main characters destroyed by the infamous weapon. Yeah, I don't see this show doing something that super sad and depressing.
Yeah, if the show just ended with death across the board, that might be a little...
I didn't realize, it was so Disney that I didn't think it was the Hunchback of Notre Dame, but then Disney did that, but then they didn't kill everyone at the end, so...
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna kind of, leave at least one person alive to, have it be Star Wars. It's gonna be somewhat optimistic. It can go dark, but at the end, you don't want it to just be, death across the board. Unless you're telling a story about a Sith, then you can do that.
Well, and, even if you did want that, I don't see this show doing that. It would be so atonal, right? It would just be... Or maybe they're trying to throw us off the track.
Yeah, I mean, they could always just, I don't know what happened to him because I didn't watch the rest of this. So they could just bring back Spider Legs Darth Maul to randomly come in and assassinate everyone or something.
Yeah, I think he later on did not have spider legs. I think he ended up with robotic legs or something.
Oh, okay. Spider Maul.
Spider Maul does whatever a Spider Maul can. Peter Parker. I don't think he's the real Peter Parker, Dan.
If he is, we should get in touch.
This is the Peter Parker from the alternate dimension where he's really Spider-Maul. He says, hey, Cap, do you think there's a chance Lando could return? Not only a chance, he's been voice cast already. That's happening.
Lando's going to be in the show?
Yeah, he's been voice cast.
Oh, that's awesome.
At least according to Wikipedia, which, of course, is the word of God.
Wikipedia, voice of God.
Shiny shoes! Robert Modell, Cap, since you didn't watch Star Wars The Clone Wars, I watched a couple episodes, but not much of it, yeah. You probably missed the symbolism of paralleling the training of the Stormtrooper cadets in contrast to the Clone Troopers, where episodes deal with training them to develop adaptability and teamwork, and thematically that even though they are clones, they have a degree of individuality by using their hair dyes and having tattoos and personalizing their armor with symbols and war paint, which counterpoints the thematic issues the Stormtroopers stormtroopers and drones are all about self-interest and ironically lacking identity. Yes, you're right. I did not know about all that.
Me either.
But but I think you're right that they might be calling back to that some.
That is true. I I have a feeling every comment is going to be things that we didn't know about from the Clone Wars.
It's not every comment. That's not
Oh,
fair.
okay.
Now I'm not going to read anything else that has to do with Clone Wars.
I mean, you
Red Letter
can.
Antilles. This episode was very much like an episode of the Clone Wars, where where Boba infiltrates a group of young clone cadets who he befriends. But you're right, it is like that. Though that story is a little more interesting as Boba leaves the clones he befriended to die in an escape pod after he destroyed a cruiser to kill Mace Windu. I think it's important to note, Dan, that when you have a series like this that comes immediately off another series that got canceled that people liked that wanted to see more of, certainly you can't begrudge people comparing them.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I don't know. Speaking anecdotally about the Boba Fett thing, I haven't seen the episode, but I've heard from people that watch the show what they did with Logan Fett, and in contrast to some of the novels and comics I've read about him, I'm not sure that I like the direction. But I'd have to watch it and form an opinion on it, I suppose.
Mass Sci-Fi Fan, you guys keep saying that the relationship built between Ezra and Zeb was lost by the next episode. I disagree. Just because they were back to fighting each other doesn't mean that their connection was lost. Siblings and families bicker, make up, and then bicker again all the time. And the fact that they're still not always nice to each other makes the relationship more realistic. Yeah, I can see that. It's just it just kind of felt like that other episode didn't really happen. I don't know. I don't know. It's one of those instinctual things where I was just like, I kind of feel like whoever wrote this maybe didn't know about the last episode.
I feel like this episode was a little bit better with Zeb and Ezra in that regard. What they got
Yeah,
to do here.
I thought so too, and still I don't think not realistic. I mean, like they still have some affinity for each other, but they bicker constantly. So yeah, let's see. Fun fact, the EU Akbar was a personal slave of Tarkin, which means that he would follow Tarkin wherever he would go. He pretended like he didn't understand anything, so Tarkin didn't think about slipping a word or two about the Imperial strategies and secret bases in front of Akbar. And after several years of learning about fleet strategies and commanding, he was saved by the rebels in an attack on Tarkin's vessel. Well, that's cool.
Oh my God, Akbar himself was literally a trap.
Yeah, he was on trap!
That's amazing.
So
He was
clearly everything about that character comes completely from the one line.
so he was like Tarkin's house elf, but an Akbar. I don't remember the
It's
I don't remember the species that Akbar belongs to off the top of my head at the moment, but we'll just call him a house Akbar for
he
lack of a better
was
word.
yeah, his species name is derived from calamari.
Oh yeah, the Mon Calamari star cruisers are the ships that the rebels use. So I think he is a calamari. Now that you say
Isn't
it.
he?
Yeah,
Yeah, which is hilarious because he looks like calamari and he's like an appetizer. So like you serve him in front of seafood and then he goes, "That's a trap."
and see, we're getting so much mileage out of this Akbar thing.
I
Not
know.
even in the
Yeah.
show.
Well, let's go ahead and stop talking about a character that has not appeared in this show yet. I don't think Akbar has appeared at all in the show yet. How did Akbar even come up?
Your guess is as good as mine. I think we mentioned him in the last episode.
I know we did. I know we did, but I can't remember why.
Me either.
Okay, whatever. We've completely derailed now. Let's
let's
go
just
on.
accept this gift as it is.
Yeah. Nope. Let's do that. Yeah. Time for Out of Darkness. Today's episode. This show, Dan, is. I'm sorry. 1 second. This is kind of a take on your standard two people who don't get along forced to work together story.
Yeah. Before we talk about that kind of stuff, they totally named this Out of Darkness because J.J. Abrams made Star Trek Into Darkness season 2 and 7.
No, they didn't.
They totally did.
Star Wars Out of Darkness. Well, I know. Are you one of the people? who has been saying the next movie should be called Star Trek Out of Darkness.
that would be really funny.
Yeah, okay, maybe they were thinking that. I don't know. That's a good point. I don't know why I didn't even think of it. I didn't even think of that.
It's called Out of Darkness. I don't know. I immediately thought that. I was like, oh, that's kind of funny.
Yeah, yeah, that is kind of funny.
But anyway, as you were
What would
saying,
you like to discuss next, Dan?
things of actual substance that you were saying.
Yeah. So anyway, Dan, I kind of felt like this one was stretched a little thin.
I think so too. I was glad to see an episode that focused on these two characters because they were the two that we had mentioned before as being the most sort of underdeveloped. Not that I didn't like them; it's just there wasn't all that much there.
Yeah.
We get a little hint at Sabine's background, other than the fact that we know she's vaguely Mandalorian because she's got Mandalorian armor on and she likes
Yeah.
painting. Um, we learned that she was also in the Imperial Academy, which is kind of interesting. But I'd like to know more about her and Hera specifically. Like we got an episode that was kind of a mission where she got to go off on her own. We didn't really. We learned a little bit about her too. We learned that she's okay with compartmentalization and like being sort of the Obi-Wan thing, telling half truths in the interest of um, helping someone, like hiding a truth from them that they're not ready to face or something like that.
Yeah, and just for the sake of their own safety, I thought that it handled that idea okay. Of sometimes people have to keep secrets from other people, and it has nothing to do with whether or not they trust them, but that they're having that information would be detrimental to them. And so, wouldn't it be a lot worse if you gave them that, and then something happened to them, and that now you're responsible? So the thing you did was actually somewhat of an untrustworthy thing by telling them a thing.
Yeah, exactly.
That was good. I felt like it was a little spoon fed to us though. Like just they kept talking about it and talking about it, and I kind of wish it had just played out instead of there being just so much talk about that stuff.
Yeah, this one felt to me a lot like the Sabine, not Sabine. That's the person that's in this episode.
Yes, it is.
The Zeb and Ezra episode, where they just kind of went off and did their own thing for a little while, and there was a very, clear through line messagey kind of thing going on. I'm hoping that we don't get very many more episodes like this, and we kind of do similar episodes to the ones we did last time, where we have it contributes to the ongoing story. I mean, this episode does definitely add to the ongoing story in that the rebels that we see here seem to have some sort of bigger plan that we didn't really know about before. They mentioned that they have some sort of plan, but not all that much is given to us. It's like they're like keeping secrets from the audience. It's weird.
Yeah, and I like that a lot. I like that we are primarily with Ezra and we're not allowed to know too much about the people running the ship.
Mhm.
That's kind of interesting. Like even when we've hung out um the Jedi guy, I am still not completely 100% getting names on this show.
Kanan?
Thank you. But like even when we're hanging out with him, I feel distance from him in a way I don't from Ezra, and I think that's on purpose.
I think so too. And hopefully all of that pays off and ends up being really interesting because the pilot episode of the show I really liked, and some of the other episodes, the one with the Inquisitor, the one that we saw last time, were really good. These two, the kind of buddy cop esque mission episodes that we've gotten so far have been my least favorite. Not that this one was bad.
No, no, it's not bad, but I did think that it had a pretty glaring missed opportunity.
Okay,
which
interesting.
which was which was so we go down to this planet, and Sabine wants to know who the contact is and is told that it would be detrimental to her if she knew, and Hera has to keep that kind of information from her. Wouldn't it and perhaps maybe later on we'll do this. I just think that maybe we're moving at too slow of a clip here because there wasn't enough meat to this one. I don't think. Wouldn't it have been a lot more interesting if we'd gone down and we played that out and like she met that person and then we played out why it's really bad for her to have that information?
I think the
I mean,
thing.
not knowing who it is and not knowing what the overarching plot is, I might look back at this later and go, okay, I see why they couldn't do that. But I think that because they're having to keep major stuff from us right now, they had to kind of give us an episode that was really 10 minutes worth of material and try to stretch it to 22.
Yeah, I think the thing with keeping the contact from her has something to do with a lot of the people who become the leadership of the Rebel Alliance later on were former members of the Imperial Senate, like Mon Mothma and Senator Organa and stuff. And the fact that she was in the Imperial Academy and hates the Empire so much because she was manipulated by them, she might, you know, get really angry at the crew for working someone that's in such a high level of power in the imperial system.
That's a really good point. And I really like the way that, and this is a really classic Star Wars thing, the way that people's names in this show reflect either their personality or their positions. This guy is his nickname, what they call him over the comms, is Fulcrum.
Mm-hmm.
And fulcrum, of course, means a thing that plays an essential role. And so it's like it's pivotal that this guy keeps his keeps his identity a secret. I would bet you money that he's somebody we've heard of.
I would hope so. Um, we saw Senator Organa earlier in the droids episode, so maybe it's him. I don't know. I would be interested.
Because I think they want to play that for a reveal for the audience.
Yeah, I hope it's one of the imperial, I mean, rebel leaders that we know from the movies. That would be really cool.
Dan, let's just quit beating around the bush. Get rid of the elephant in the room. It's Akbar.
Oh, I really hope that's what it is. I
That's who it
really,
is. It's Akbar. Then the whole thing comes full circle, right?
I am the trap. He's like Judge
Uh,
Dredd, but in Star Wars.
but yeah, so I mean, I'm not, I don't want to criticize it too much for not going the direction I was really hoping it would. Just like oh, it didn't do the thing I wanted it to, so that's bad or whatever. I like they're obviously moving in a direction, and as you said, this isn't just a standalone episode. We are contributing to the larger story a little bit, but we kept talking so much about the ideas of trust and stuff, and that like I just felt like not enough actual story happened. When toward the end, the idea is Hera saves Sabine's life, and now she can trust her. And I mean that's okay, I suppose. But I don't know. I just wasn't super impressed with the whole package really.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to see like the fact that Hera's not as she's not just the like loving maternal support everybody kind of figure that we thought she was initially. Like she's okay with deceiving people if she absolutely has to. I
And
mean,
importantly, that's also cool for her namesake.
yes, that is very cool. Being named after a Greek goddess and who's angry about Zeus doing stuff all the time.
And that is a very manipulative goddess.
Yes, exactly. Um, so it's all like hints of stuff for the future.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. I wish we could have gotten more background from people. When we started finally talking a little bit about Sabine, I was like, "Oh, cool! We're gonna really get some stuff for her." And it just wasn't enough, really. Like I really like the idea that there was a time where she really believed and bought into what the Empire was selling, and that she's gone so far in the other direction because something really bad happened to her, and that is something that I mean that like I'm really interested in. Like I don't know. Like maybe I don't mind so much that we didn't get that yet because it is kind of a fun thing to think about for a minute before we know what it is. Like what exactly happened to her?
Yeah, I'd like to see what happened to her because at least in the EU things that I've read, played, and watched, the Mandalorians traditionally ally themselves with the Sith empires whenever they rise because they have similar kind of philosophies and worldviews. I mean, they're different cultures, but it's kind of like a survival of the fittest warrior kind of culture. It's similar to like the Spartans and that's why they're always kind of more sympathetic with the Sith side. So it's interesting to see that a former Mandalorian broke away from that kind of thinking. I don't know. I heard that there were some things that were done with them in Clone Wars that changed them, but I don't know exactly what they did, if they're still a warrior culture or not, like they were before.
And of course, I don't think that we know for sure if she's definitely Mandalorian.
They did confirm that in
Oh, they did confirm that. Okay.
development behind the scenes things that I watched. Yes.
Oh well, that's really cool. Then, if that's the case, because then she's come to this worldview completely independently.
Yes, exactly.
And she's all about being independent, right? She's super anti-establishment, and I like that she's got that very kind of modern rebel thing going on, but came to it completely on her own. And so this ideology of being against following orders blindly isn't something that anybody passed down to her. She used to follow orders blindly, and it led her to a really bad place. So she's developed this new worldview. It kind of makes her right now the most interesting character in the show.
Yeah, and I think that's what you just mentioned is why she's so uncomfortable with being compartmentalized and not
Yeah.
knowing everything, because she wants to be able to make independent decisions based on the best information possible. She doesn't want to blindly follow orders, like you said. So all of that stuff is cool if you know that little bit of information and the fact, and stuff about Mandalorians, but the episode standing on its own, I don't think I'm with you. I don't think it gives us all that enough material to warrant 22-minute episode.
Yeah, I mean it's mostly just a lot of action, and the action's really good.
It is
But
really good.
it's primarily just let's put these two people in a situation. One isn't trusting the other one, and give her a reason to trust her. And then at the end, I both like and don't like the very last scene, and we'll talk about that when we get to my worst moment. But when you get to the very end, she still can't come right out and say for sure I trust you.
Yeah, and I'm with
Like,
you.
because there's different kinds of trust, right? Where we're like, okay, I trust you in that I know that you've kind of proven that in a pinch, as long as it kind of serves both of our interests, you would save my life. But if I mean, because the situation wasn't. I don't know. Was it 100% selfless? Was it like, well, yeah, because I guess then the ship shows up and saves them.
Yeah, it does. And
So I guess it is, but I'm just saying that, like, but that doesn't mean that on the whole I can be sure that you and I are on the same page as far as how we should be, as they keep saying, stick it to the rebellion, right?
right.
Like this is we keep saying that this show is a lot like Firefly. These are characters that are all on separate paths, and right now this path they're all on the same, like their separate paths have led them all together, but they're still all very individual. And she's a character who, if she's not sure that that these people are too close to the way the Empire operates, she'll run off on her own because she doesn't want to try to stop the Empire by stooping to their level.
Yeah, that's true. And it's going to be interesting to see like what the rebellion's, at least this crew of rebels, bigger plan is in recruiting people later on, because I think, no matter what side in a war you're fighting, you're going to have to kind of do things that you regret, and terrible things, that you can't just be wholly altruistic in a war inherently. I don't think so. It's going to be interesting to see Sabine kind of grapple with dealing with that kind of stuff, because at this point they're just like kind of petty criminals as far as she knows. Um, they're not like actually doing covert missions that could be responsible for the deaths of lots of people. Like when the rebels blow up the Death Star in A New Hope, there's always like jokes online about the stormtroopers that are like never forget when the Death Star blew up and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see if they ever go there with her, and I hope they do.
Yeah, because right now the question is, does she see herself as a survivor or a terrorist?
Yeah, that's true. That's an interesting question.
You know, and you got to ask that question about everybody on that ship. And again, they all have kind of different motivations for being there. I mean, you have that token, like they will put themselves on the line for other people because that's the big thing they had to teach Ezra. But as far as more specifically, personally, why are they there? I think it's kind of different for different people. Something I really liked about this episode was a very subtle moment with Zeb, right? I don't know if you caught it, Dan. Right before he's eating dinner, he's praying to whatever deity he believes in.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. That's awesome.
And right before that, I think it's before that, you've got Kanan meditating. And we've had Hera talking up the idea of belief really hard to Sabine. Of course, she's not talking about belief in a deity, but she's talking about believing in something larger than yourself and not and being able to follow something and being okay with not knowing everything about it. And I think that those things are kind of there to show us what characters are more with Hera's worldview and which ones aren't.
That's a good point. Yeah, I didn't notice that stuff. That I really like that. One of the other subtle lines that I noticed that I figure is a good place to mention. It goes back to what you were talking about with Hera's name before and the relation to the goddess. I really liked how Hera blames like this plan that they had going south on him, and he's like, "Oh, great, it's somehow my fault again." Just like how
Yeah.
Hera would always get angry at Zeus for things, like I mentioned earlier. There's just a lot of like really clever and witty dialogue in here that if and scenes and stuff that like you would mention, where they go quick and you won't notice them if you blink.
Yeah, and that's some really good storytelling. I thought it was really interesting, and I don't know what to make of it yet, that in the moment, Hera starts to tell Sabine to believe in them, and then she corrects herself and says to believe in Kanan because he knows what he's doing.
Hmm.
And that's the first time that we've really gotten a sense that Kanan is the guy who is definitely in charge.
That is true.
Because the first episode, I kept calling him the starship captain. He's not really the captain. Hera's always flying the ship. They will kind of make choices together. You never really see Kanan, even as much as like Mal on Firefly, walk up onto the bridge and say, "Okay, everyone, this is what we're doing." There's always kind of conversation and some kind of consensus, even if there are kind of strays who don't agree with me. So far, I've kind of seen this as more of like a majority rules kind of shit. And then this episode, we get the sense that there's this grander plan that not everybody is privy to, and I never got that sense before.
Yeah, It reveals a lot of things, but it doesn't tell us enough, like we had been saying before, for my satisfaction.
Just for the sake of real estate is all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I don't know. I guess I just feel like the because I'm not saying that what makes this show a good episode of the show work is that you give us a whole ton of information about the main story moving forward. It's just that if you're gonna do a more one and done episode, I wasn't like real enamored with the creatures in the darkness plot.
Yeah, I wasn't either, and I thought maybe they would have an opportunity to do more of a horror kind of thing with Star Wars, because that's been done in some things that I've seen and done well. Especially like the Republic Commando video game and the Geonosians. They do some cool like horror vibe kind of stuff with them, like popping out of the darkness and stuff. I was hoping they might do that kind of stuff, but then again, this is a Disney cartoon aimed at um, you know kids, so maybe
Yeah,
they
and that's
wouldn't
something
go
we have
too
to keep in
scary.
mind. That's something we have to keep in mind when we're talking about episodes with morals,
Hmm.
because we have to expect some of that, but it can be done a little bit more subtly than I think it was handled here.
I agree, and I think the show's done it a little bit more subtly than we have seen it here before.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, let's go ahead and go on to best moment, worst moment. What was your favorite moment for the episode, Dan?
My favorite moment was the fact that they left us with a dangling plot thread and possibly a larger scheme for the rebels in mind. Like that whole conceit for the episode was my favorite thing because it was the most interesting thing in the whole episode.
Yeah, I thought so too. I can't. Um, I can't pretend like I wasn't smiling a bit when the ghost showed up and rescued Sabine and Hera, mostly because the soundtrack was just really good right there.
The soundtrack was really good in this episode. They played some of the classic ship battle music from the original trilogy when the TIE fighters were chasing them at the beginning too, which was really cool.
The show is doing really well with its orchestral music. It all sounds really authentic. It all sounds really Star Wars. And this episode in particular, for some reason, I kept lashing out on the soundtrack. I thought it was really good.
No, I'm with you. I thought it was great too.
Dan, worst moment.
My
Is it
wor-
mine?
my worst moment. I didn't really have a moment that stuck out for me as being particularly awful, so I didn't really write one down. What was yours?
Well, it's not awful. And as I said, it's the ending. I liked that Sabine could not commit to straight up saying, I trust you. What I wasn't sure about was I think I can try.
Okay.
And not from a character place, but from a writing place. We just did a whole episode about do or do not do, there is no try.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have her say, I can try. And the way the scene is played, it's played like it's a positive thing, like eventually they'll come together and this will work out. I kind of thought that line, I'm not even complaining that they used that line. I thought it would have made a lot more sense if they had played it more like this kind of like unsure. We don't know how these characters are going to go later on. Like I would have appreciated going back to Hera and her having a look on her face like, oh man, unfortunately, what we just went through hasn't changed your mind that much. Like because we just had that whole episode about how if you think about things in the sense of trying instead of just straight up doing, you can sabotage yourself. When she says I can try, it makes me think you're never going to allow yourself to trust this person. And I just would have liked the scene to have played more the direction that the other episode was going with that whole idea, given that we did an entire episode about that.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I don't know that I necessarily read the scene the same way you did. I thought it was kind of more towards the what you were talking about. You wish it was for me. That's how I kind of read it. Maybe I'd watch it again and feel
Oh,
differently.
that's good.
But
That's what it should be, I think.
I actually picked that as my best line because I thought it kind of encapsulated what was going on with their character in the whole episode. I did like that. The try thing I didn't even think about, but I like that they kind of went there because um, it's kind of like the one rift between the characters we've seen on the ship so far.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
like we had these character building episodes with everyone except those two characters so far, and this is the first one that didn't really work out, and they aren't like happy go lucky trusting each other completely. Like Zeb and Sabine will like bicker and stuff, but they have like a bond where they're going to stick up for each other and they completely trust each other in these combat situations. Same thing with Kanan and Ezra, and obviously
Yeah.
same thing with Kanan and Hera because they're romantically involved. Sabine's kind of like the odd person out, and she's again the individual and kind of um, ostracized in what's supposed to be your family by the end, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I guess I just would have appreciated more friction. I found it awkward because I couldn't decide if whoever wrote this episode was even like thinking about the fact that there was a whole episode about the word try.
Yeah, yeah.
That's all I'm saying is like it just would have been nice to know if it was doing anything with that idea or if I should completely separate them.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Dan, I didn't really have a quote with this one.
Yeah, I mean the one I mentioned was the only one that really stuck out to me. I didn't find it to be all that quotable either. I wish I could have picked something better than that because it's not like something that I would quote because it's that awesome again. you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, unfortunately, there's no Holy Ghost on a bicycle in this episode.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Uh, let's go on to. I guess we're gonna go all the way to hopes and predictions because there were no stormtroopers in this episode, so we don't have any That's So Stormtrooper.
Unfortunately.
Did you have any tidbits?
I would really like to delve into Sabine's background more, as we mentioned before.
Predictions, yeah, okay.
Um, I'm trying to think what else. I really hope that we find out what the rebellion's plan is and stuff. In my other prediction was that the mysterious person that they're contacting in this is someone that's a future leader of the rebellion that we see in the movies.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. Dollars to Donuts. There will be an episode focusing on C3PO, R2D2, and Chopper.
That would be cool.
I think that will happen. And I thought of that this episode because they finally just started trying to give the robots some personality.
Yeah, that is true. I like Chopper's
I kind of see
personality.
that coming. I think he's funny because he's just so limited.
Yeah.
Dan, what is your trivia question for today, sir?
My trivia question from last week.
Oh, I'm sorry, from last week. Yeah, I know how this works.
My trivia question from last week was, what is the name of the standard issue blaster rifle for stormtroopers? And the answer was the Blastech E11 blaster rifle. So,
I think somebody in the comments gave us that, but nobody actually sent it to me.
oh, okay.
My question was, what kind of parts did that guy try to bring to, what was that kid's name? I'm forgetting now. But the kid that we think is going to come back later, brought to Callus, and it was pod racer parts.
Yes, pod racer parts.
Which I thought was really funny, and Goku 48071 got that right. So good job to you, sir. And Dan, what is your question for today? Now we can do that part.
Yeah, since we had an episode that had a Mandalorian as one of the main characters, I couldn't help but ask a question about my favorite Mandalorian, Mr. Boba Fett.
Mr. Boba Fett.
And my question is, in which Star Wars thing did Boba Fett make his first appearance?
All right. Well, my question today, as always from the episode, is what is the name of Hera's fighter vessel that they go off to that planet in and run out of gas because apparently in this show the men are incompetent and the women are not.
It's his fault again, isn't it?
Well, anyway, everybody, thanks so much for listening. If you know the answer to one or both of our trivia questions, you can send it to geekvolution.com, go to the contact page, send it to me, and whoever is quickest on the draw with the correct answer will be mentioned in next week's episode. Dan, thanks so much for joining me.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I had a great time, and I can't wait for next week's episode because it's probably going to be good.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. I'm saying this based on nothing. Anyway, I too am looking forward to more Star Wars. And thanks for listening, folks. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
And we'll see you later.